Imagine performing open heart surgery on yourself.
Oh boy.
Yeah, you're holding the scalpel, your hands are totally shaking, but you just know you have to get in there. So you make the incision, you pull back the ribs, and you look inside your own chest.
Right.
But instead of a beating heart or, lungs or veins or anything biological, you just find nothing.
Wow.
You don't have a heart, there are no organs. It's just this massive, cavernous, empty void.
I mean, that is an incredibly chilling image. It just completely defies all logic.
Right. It's basically pure body horror. But today, we aren't dissecting a horror script, and we aren't looking at some piece of avant-garde fiction.
No, we definitely aren't.
We are dissecting the exact mechanics of a real human nightmare. Welcome to the deep dive. Today's mission is, it's entirely unique for us.
It really is.
Usually we're parsing through dense research papers or investigating historical events, maybe analyzing some complex socioeconomic trend. But our source material today is this singular, intensely detailed, and frankly, deeply unsettling personal account.
Yeah, it's a first-hand documentation of a nightmare.
Exactly. And the focus of our deep dive today is going to be intensive dream analysis. We're really putting dream analysis at the absolute center of this.
And we are going to approach this with the rigor of an actual investigation. Because, this isn't just a random assortment of scary images. This text serves as a phenomenal case study.
Right.
We are essentially going to be acting as dream detectives today. We want to look at the neurobiology and the psychology of how a human brain constructs terror.
Yeah, we're going to unpack the symbolism, of course, but more importantly, we're going to look at the mechanics, like the shifting, bizarre logic and the profound psychological implications that are just sort of hidden within this nocturnal narrative.
I love that approach. And, if you're listening to this, you've obviously had a bad dream before.
Oh, everyone has.
Right, we all have. You wake up sweating, your heart is pounding, maybe you were falling, or showing up to a final exam in your underwear.
The classics, exactly. But I want you to imagine a dream so vivid, so grotesque, and so narratively complex that it feels less like a random firing of neurons and more like a psychological thriller that has been meticulously designed to break your spirit.
Yeah, that's the level we're at today.
Think of this like we're analyzing a crime scene, but the crime takes place entirely within the subconscious mind. And the victim, the betrayers, the setting, and even the eventual savior are all being rendered by the exact same brain simultaneously.
That is the crucial point to remember here. The brain is acting as the director, the set designer, the antagonist, and the victim all at once.
It's multitasking.
Totally. And the source text we're analyzing today, it's a first-hand account that begins with something so incredibly mundane. It's just a routine hospital visit for a minor toenail injury.
Right.
But from there, the subconscious initiates this rapid, terrifying spiral. It moves into a narrative of forced medical procedures, deep interpersonal betrayal, literal physical hollowness, like you mentioned, with that opening hook, and an incredibly intense, visceral struggle for survival.
And what's really going to make this deep dive so different is that we aren't just going to guess at what things symbolize. We actually have a key.
We do.
I'm going to give you, the listener, a little teaser for the end of our journey today. The most fascinating piece of this entire puzzle actually happens outside of the dream itself.
Right, in the real world.
Exactly. In the final lines of the source text, the author reveals a specific conscious thought they had in the waking world right before their head hit the pillow.
Yeah.
And that single waking thought entirely unlocks the meaning of every horrifying thing that happens in the dream.
It's the skeleton key. In the field of dream analysis, we often debate whether dreams are, Freudian wish fulfillment, or maybe Jungian encounters with the shadow self.
Or just random noise, right?
Exactly. The modern neurobiological activation synthesis hypothesis, which basically argues that dreams are just the brain's logic center trying to make sense of random brainstem static.
Just firing off in the dark.
Yeah, right. But this specific text really bridges the gap. It transforms the nightmare from a random assortment of scary brain static into a structured, almost argumentative response from the deeper mind.
Okay, so we have our crime scene. Let's step past the yellow tape and look at where this nightmare actually begins. Because to really understand how the brain constructs a psychological thriller, we have to look at how it builds the set.
Absolutely.
The dreamer is at a hospital, but it's actually their second hospital visit for an ongoing, completely mundane issue. It's a toenail injury on both feet. The text explicitly notes the nail on the left foot is discolored, purple or pink, like it's been smashed or cracked.
Which is exactly how you want to start a deception, psychologically speaking.
How so?
Well, if you look at the neurobiology of how sleep begins, as you drift off, your hippocampus, which is the part of the brain responsible for memory consolidation, often starts replaying mundane recent events.
Like it's sorting through the day's trivial fight.
Precisely. So in dream analysis, starting with a minor grounded ailment, like a discolored toenail, is a brilliant tactic by the subconscious.
Ooh.
It establishes a false sense of low stakes.
Right, because we all know the mild annoyance of a minor injury. If a tiger jumps out at you in a dream, your amygdala, the fear center, spikes immediately, and you might just wake up.
Yeah, you abort the simulation.
Exactly. But a toenail, it doesn't trigger our fight or flight response. It just triggers our bureaucratic patience. You're just sitting in a waiting room in your mind.
That's a great way to put it. The subconscious is really lulling the dreamer into a state of routine compliance. And to solidify this false sense of security, the dream introduces a familiar face.
Oh, the nurse.
Yes, the dreamer is reunited, entirely by chance, with a friendly female nurse who had treated them at the first hospital. They had previously said goodbye to her because she was transferring, and suddenly, boom, here she is at the second hospital.
Now wait, let me jump in here. If I'm dreaming about a hospital, even if there's a friendly nurse, I'm still in a hospital. Isn't that inherently a stress-inducing environment? Why would the brain use a hospital to make the dreamer feel safe?
That's a really great nuance.
Yeah.
The hospital itself isn't meant to make them feel safe. It's meant to make them feel subservient. Think about the social contract of a hospital. When you enter a medical facility, you implicitly agree to follow instructions. You take a number. You sit where they tell you to sit. You let them examine you.
You give up your autonomy right at the front desk.
Exactly. By placing the dreamer in a medical setting with a trusted authority figure, the friendly nurse, the dream is purposefully utilizing that psychological conditioning. It builds a foundation of compliance, which it fully intends to exploit.
Ah, okay, so it's not about safety, it's about docility. You are being primed to obey.
Yes.
But even with that friendly face, the setting itself starts to degrade into something really unsettling. It's not a normal hospital layout.
No, not at all.
The dreamer notes that they aren't in private rooms. Instead, they are in a vast, wide-open space that feels like a massive gymnasium. And the floor is just covered in a massive amount of futons, packed tightly together. Patients are lying in this dense cluster on the floor, and nurses are walking among them, giving treatments right there in the open.
The architecture of the dream is actively shifting here. It's reflecting a creeping systemic anxiety. A gymnasium setting is brilliant from a psychological torture perspective.
Because it's so public?
Yes, it strips away all medical privacy. In a normal hospital bed, you have a room, or at least a curtain. You have a designated elevated space. By placing the dreamer on a futon on the floor of a cavernous room, the dream is turning healthcare into a vulnerable mass processing event.
It's like a refugee camp or a disaster triage center.
Precisely. And physically, the floor is the lowest point of power. You are literally beneath everyone who is walking around you. A gymnasium is built for crowds, for physical exertion, not for healing or comfort or privacy. It introduces this really subtle, creeping sense of indignity.
I was thinking the exact same thing. Why a gymnasium floor instead of a bed? It feels like the dream is systematically stripping away the dreamer's dignity before the real horror even starts. It's like the subconscious is setting a trap using the comfort of a familiar face, but placing it in an environment that inherently makes you feel like livestock. You are just part of a herd.
And it's exactly in this vulnerable, public, herd-like setting that the distraction tactics begin. The dream needs to perform an invasive procedure, but it doesn't want the dreamer to fight back. So it uses a magician's sleight of hand.
Right.
The friendly nurse is treating the left foot, discussing how the purple and pink discoloration needs continued treatment. Meanwhile, a younger rookie nurse is assigned to the right foot. The dreamer mentions the tip of their right big toe feels numb, and the rookie is massaging it. So think about the dreamer's physical attention right now.
It's entirely focused on the extremities. Both feet are being touched and discussed.
Right. And here is where the subconscious pulls off its magic trick. The friendly nurse tells the rookie nurse to grab something from a shopping basket.
Okay.
But the basket isn't on the floor. It's located directly above the dreamer's head.
Which, if you think about it with waking logic, makes zero sense. A shopping basket hovering above your head in a hospital gymnasium. It's completely absurd.
It is absurd. But this is where the mechanics of REM sleep come into play. During REM sleep, your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for logic, critical thinking, and anomaly detection, is largely powered down.
So you just don't question it.
Right, the brain's reality testing function is offline. So when the dream engine renders a shopping basket above your head, your dormant prefrontal cortex doesn't flag it as an error. You just accept it as an implanted objective.
It's just the new rule of the universe.
Okay.
Okay, so the rookie nurse can't quite reach this absurd basket. The dreamer, being a helpful, compliant patient in this social contract, looks up and reaches back over their own head to pull the basket closer.
Yeah.
Their chin is up, their arms are back, their chest and abdomen are completely exposed. And right in that precise moment of distraction, the dreamer feels a cloth pressed against their crotch.
This is the pivot. The misdirection is executed flawlessly. The basket above the head is a sleight-of-hand technique orchestrated by the sleeping brain.
Oh.
It created a perfectly logical, helpful reason within the dream's narrative for the dreamer to look away and stretch their body out, leaving their core completely vulnerable.
And it turns out that cloth wasn't just a cloth. It was the stealthy insertion of a urinary catheter.
Yeah.
And the most chilling part of the text here, it explicitly states there was absolutely no pain and no initial discomfort. The dreamer just feels the cloth, wonders what it is, and eventually lifts their head to look down, only to realize a tube has been inserted into their urethra.
Which brings up a really fascinating point about how the brain simulates physical sensation during a dream. Why wouldn't a highly invasive forced catheterization hurt?
Yeah, why wouldn't it? If the brain wants to scare you, wouldn't it simulate agonizing pain?
Not necessarily. In the brain, the perception of touch and the perception of pain are handled by entirely different pathways.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The somatosensory cortex can simulate the feeling of a cloth, the pressure of a tube, without actually triggering nociception, which is the firing of pain receptors. Often, the absence of pain in a dream violation is actually more psychologically unsettling than the presence of it.
Because it implies you're broken, or that you didn't even notice the breach.
Exactly. The lack of pain signifies a profound violation of boundaries that completely bypass the body's alarm system. The dreamer has been invaded physically without even the biological warning system of pain to alert them.
That's terrifying.
It highlights a complete and utter loss of bodily autonomy. The friendly nurse, the mundane toenail, the helpful gesture with the basket, it was all a beautifully constructed, painless lie to bypass the dreamer's defenses.
So the dreamer is lying there on a futon in a gym. They've just realized they've been catheterized without consent by the friendly nurse they trusted. The illusion of the waiting room is over.
It's completely shattered. The architecture of false safety has served its purpose. The dreamer is now trapped. And what we see next is how a dream radically shifts the environment to match a new reality of captivity.
Right, because the moment the dreamer realizes what has happened, the location violently shifts. We aren't in the wide-open gymnasium anymore. The dreamer is suddenly transported to a sterile, cramped operating room.
This spatial jump is deeply characteristic of a shifting dream state. Once the deception is revealed, the mind doesn't need the gymnasium facade anymore.
It just ditches the set.
Exactly. The rendering engine of the dream discards the previous set and transports the consciousness directly to the site of trauma, the operating room.
And the friendly nurse, the one who lulled them into this. Her demeanor instantly shatters. The warmth is totally gone. She looks at the dreamer with these cold, dead eyes and simply states, "You are being hospitalized starting today."
Psychologically, this is the emotional core of the nightmare, the betrayal by the friendly caregiver.
It hurts more than a monster.
It really does. It's not a monster stepping out of the shadows. It's a trusted individual who suddenly reveals themselves to be an authoritarian captor. This mirrors a deep-seated fear of gaslighting, the terror that the people who are supposed to care for you are actually manipulating you for their own unknown ends. It taps into a primal vulnerability.
The dreamer is understandably panicked. They try to fight back. They try to yell out, "What do you mean?" But nothing comes out. They have completely lost their voice. They're just opening their mouth and pushing air.
The sudden loss of voice is a hallmark of intense nightmares. If you've experienced it, you know how uniquely terrifying it is. But there is a very specific, deeply biological reason how and why this happens.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics of this. Why do we go mute in nightmares?
It comes down to a mechanism called rematonia. When you enter REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, which is when we have our most vivid story-like dreams, your brain wants to make sure you don't physically act out the dream.
Makes sense.
If you're running from a tiger in your dream, You don't want to actually sprint out of your bed and crash through a window.
Right. That would be an evolutionary disaster.
Exactly. So, to protect you, a part of your brainstem called the pons sends signals down to your spinal cord. It releases neurotransmitters like GABA and glycine, which essentially act as an off switch for your motor neurons.
So it just unplugs everything.
Yeah, they hyperpolarize the motor neurons, making them extremely difficult to fire. This induces a state of natural temporary paralysis throughout your entire body. Your muscles are offline.
But your brain is still firing on all cylinders.
Yes. But here is where the nightmare glitch happens. Sometimes the conscious awareness of the dream state brushes up against the physical reality of that paralysis.
Oh, I see where this is going.
In the nightmare, the dreamer feels terror and wants to scream. The brain's motor cortex sends the signal. Vocal cords contract, lungs push air. But the signal hits the roadblock in the brainstem. The paralyzed vocal cords in the physical body don't respond.
So the physical body is failing the virtual simulation.
Precisely. And the sleeping mind, which is trying to construct a coherent narrative out of all this data, interprets that physical failure and writes it directly into the script of the dream.
Wow.
You are desperately trying to make a sound. The brain registers that no sound is being made, so the dream renders you as physically muted. It is the ultimate expression of the inability to advocate for oneself, driven entirely by neurochemistry.
That is fascinating and honestly horrifying.
Yeah.
Your own safety mechanism, the paralysis keeping you safe in bed, is weaponized by the dream to make you feel helpless.
Exactly.
So you're trapped in this cramped operating room, you've been violated, the person you trusted is your captor, and you can't even make a sound to protest, and the environment just gets even more claustrophobic.
That's really closes in.
The dreamer looks around this cramped OR and realizes it is filled with beds. And in those beds are elderly women who have just undergone surgery, and they are all deeply asleep.
The presence of the sleeping elderly women serves as a dark omen. From a narrative perspective, they represent the passive, helpless state that the friendly nurse intends for the dreamer.
A glimpse into the future.
Yes. Deeper than that, they are a vision of the dreamer's immediate future. Sedated, operated upon, and entirely stripped of agency. The contrast between the young, presumably healthy dreamer who just came in for a minor toenail issue and these post-op elderly women heightens the feeling that the dreamer has been forced onto a conveyor belt of systemic geriatric processing.
Like a factory.
You are no longer an individual. You are just the next body in the queue.
Trapped on the conveyor belt. And since the dreamer can't speak, since the vocal cords are paralyzed, they have to resort to a different kind of communication. There is a cleanup nurse in the room, someone who is just tidying up after the surgeries.
Right.
The dreamer locks eyes with her and starts desperately gesturing. And this is the detail from the source text that absolutely blew my mind. The dreamer points to an imaginary watch on their wrist. They make the universal gesture for money, rubbing their fingers together. They are trying to mime the argument that time and preparation are needed for hospitalization, and I haven't budgeted for this.
It's an incredible detail. In the face of surreal, terrifying medical kidnapping, the dreamer's mind clings desperately to waking world bureaucracy.
Which is so funny to me because earlier I made a joke about bureaucracy, but here it is in action. It's like trying to use an expired coupon during an armed robbery.
That's exactly what it's like.
Or trying to negotiate an interest rate with a bear that is currently eating your leg. Why on earth would the brain resort to pointing at a watch?
Because the brain is desperately trying to reboot the logic centers. Remember how we said the prefrontal cortex, the logic and rule center, is powered down during REM sleep?
Right, which is why the hovering shopping basket made perfect sense.
Yes. But intense fear can cause localized spikes in brain activity. The amygdala is screaming, the stress is peaking, and the brain is frantically searching for a defense mechanism. It reaches for the most deeply ingrained societal rules it knows.
The rules of society.
Exactly. The subconscious is utilizing social contracts as a shield. The dreamer is essentially miming, you can't do this, it violates the rules of scheduling and capitalism. I haven't paid a deposit.
Oh my gosh.
It highlights how deeply ingrained our societal structures are. Even when reality is actively fracturing and you are being subjected to body horror, our first instinct is to appeal to the rules of scheduling. It's a futile, tragic attempt to impose order on a nightmare.
But amazingly, the gesturing actually provokes a response. The dreamer is frantically pointing at their imaginary watch, miming their financial outrage, and the cleanup nurse actually understands the mime. She bursts into tears.
She becomes emotionally devastated by the situation.
Yes, the text says she cries out that in all her years of nursing experience, she has never seen something so shocking and unbelievable. She actually runs out of the operating room to get help.
Right.
Now, earlier you mentioned Jungian archetypes. Is this cleanup nurse an archetype? What does she represent in the context of dream analysis?
If we look at this through the lens of dream analysis, this crying nurse is an incredibly important figure. In a dream where the dreamer has been robbed of their physical voice, the subconscious often creates a secondary character to express the dreamer's suppressed emotions.
Oh, like a proxy.
Yes. Many psychoanalysts would argue that the cleanup nurse is the dreamer's own empathy and panic externalized into an avatar. She validates the dreamer's reality. By having her say, "I've never seen something so shocking," the dream is acknowledging its own violation of the rules. She represents the last shred of sanity in a system that has gone entirely rogue.
Wait, hold on. Let me push back on that for a second.
Go for it.
Is she definitely an avatar for empathy? Or could this be a more malicious trick by the subconscious? Could she just be the brain's way of confirming the dreamer's paranoia?
How do you mean?
Like the brain is saying, see, even the hospital staff thinks this is messed up. You really are in mortal danger. By having her run away, it just isolates the dreamer further.
That is a brilliant counterinterpretation. And frankly, it aligns even better with the mechanics of a nightmare. You're right. If she were pure empathy, she might try to untie the dreamer or remove the catheter.
Right, she'd take action.
Instead, her reaction is pure validation of the terror, followed immediately by abandonment. She confirms the horror is real and then removes the only sympathetic presence from the room. It maximizes the psychological devastation.
Because her running out for help leaves a massive void. The text notes that there are 4 other nurses remaining in this cramped operating room. And their reaction to the crying nurse and the gesturing dreamer is the exact opposite.
They do nothing.
Nothing. They don't help. They don't even flinch. The dreamer describes them explicitly as traitors.
The contrast is stark. The 4 indifferent nurses represent an inescapable systemic trap. They aren't actively torturing the dreamer with pitchforks, but their passive complicity is far more terrifying.
The banality of evil, right?
Exactly. The text implies that they are completely accustomed to this routine of silent, forced hospitalizations. The dreamer is experiencing a grave injustice, but to these nurses, it's just another Tuesday.
The horror here isn't a jump scare. It's the chilling indifference of the crowd. The dream is simulating the terrifying feeling of being gaslit by an entire system. You are screaming internally, you know a grave injustice is occurring, but everyone around you is just casually filing paperwork and prepping surgical trays. It's like when only one person sees the reality of the injustice, and then that person literally runs away, you are left entirely isolated with the monsters. But the monsters are just apathetic bureaucrats.
And the dreamer notes, feeling this profound sense of isolation. They are surrounded by traitors, they've been forced into a surgical gown, and they are waiting for an unknown, forced operation.
It's awful.
It's a distillation of the fear of institutionalized power. When the individuals within a system abandon their empathy, the system itself becomes a crushing, inescapable force.
So, what does a person do when the system fails them entirely? When the sympathetic nurse runs away and the complicit nurses just stare blankly at you?
You take action.
Exactly. The dreamer decides to take matters into their own hands. And this brings us to what might be the most visceral, intense part of the source material. This is where the body horror truly escalates.
This is where the symbolic language of the dream becomes incredibly loud, and we transition from external institutional threat to internal physical destruction.
The dreamer is alone with these indifferent nurses. No one is going to take the catheter out. The dreamer knows they are trapped, so they grab the tube and forcefully pull it out of themselves.
Right.
Now, earlier, they were terrified of the pain of pulling it out of the urethra. But surprisingly, the text says pulling it from the entry point doesn't hurt much. However, pulling it out reveals a horrifying physical truth.
The tether.
Yes. As they pull the tube, they realize it doesn't just go into the bladder. The tube runs all the way up inside their body.
And this is where the anatomy of the dream takes a highly symbolic turn.
Exactly. As they yank on the tube, they feel a deep internal tugging sensation right at the solar plexus. The pit of the stomach, right below the rib cage. The tube feels like it has been physically sewn into the inner skin of their solar plexus.
We have to unpack the biological and psychological significance of the solar plexus here.
Yeah.
Why did the brain choose that specific anatomical anchor?
Yeah, why not the heart? Or the lungs?
To understand that, we need to talk about the enteric nervous system. Often referred to as the second brain, the enteric nervous system is a mesh-like system of neurons that governs the function of the gastrointestinal tract.
Okay.
It contains over 500 million neurons, and it communicates directly with the brain via the vagus nerve, which runs straight through
The solar
the
plexus.
solar plexus.
Oh,
Exactly.
wow. Okay. So when people talk about a gut feeling, that's not just a metaphor.
Not at all. It is a highly active biological pathway. The gut-brain axis is where we process intense physiological manifestations of emotion. It's where we feel anxiety, deep dread, and intuitive fear. When you get terrible news and you feel like you've been punched in the gut, that is your vagus nerve and enteric nervous system reacting.
So by tethering the intrusive catheter directly to the solar plexus, the subconscious isn't just making up a random anatomical connection.
Exactly. The subconscious is signaling that this isn't just a physical violation in the urinary tract. It is a direct parasitic attack on the dreamer's emotional core and their nervous system.
That makes so much sense.
The lack of pain at the entry point contrasts sharply with this deep internal tether. The real damage isn't on the surface. The dream is saying they haven't just hooked into your body. They have hooked directly into your anxiety center, your intuition, your very sense of self. Pulling the tube is like trying to rip out your own vagus nerve.
And the dreamer's response to this discovery is where things go completely off the rails into that open chest scenario I mentioned at the very beginning of the episode. It's extreme.
It really is. They don't just sit there tethered, waiting for someone to fix it. They look around the operating room, grab a surgical scalpel in their right hand, and decide to perform self-surgery.
Wow.
They bring the blade to their own chest and cut a massive vertical hole right into their solar plexus. The text describes the opening as being the size of a volleyball.
It is a phenomenal climax of desperation. The dreamer is taking agency back, but the only avenue of agency the dream allows is extreme self-mutilation.
I have to ask you, though, why?
That's a self-surgery.
Yeah. Why does the dreamer perform the surgery on themselves? They have a scalpel. They are surrounded by 4 nurses who they have explicitly labeled as traitors. Why not attack the nurses? Why not threaten them with the scalpel and escape the room? It's like the dream forces the dreamer to be the author of their own destruction.
That is the core tragedy of this nightmare. If the dreamer attacked the nurses, it would be an externalized fight. It would be an action movie. It would imply that the threat is something outside of themselves that can be defeated.
Right. But by turning the scalpel inward, the dream is forcing a moment of horrific introspection. The subconscious isn't allowing the dreamer an easy enemy. The act of self-surgery is a desperate attempt to uncover the truth of what has been done to them, to find the root of the tether, to fix the internal corruption.
Right.
But what they find is far worse than a physical anchor.
Right. Because when they open their chest, this massive volleyball-sized hole, they look inside, and the text notes that the visual was incredibly, terrifyingly realistic. They expect to see the tether.
They expect anatomy.
Exactly. They expect to see dense, packed organs, guts, a beating heart, lungs, a stomach. But there is nothing. The inside of the body is just a massive empty cavity. There are no organs, just a hollow void.
This discovery of the empty cavity is undoubtedly the most potent, devastating symbol in the entire source material.
The dreamer describes being overwhelmed by terror, disgust, and the grotesque nature of looking into their own hollowed-out body. It's not just scary, it's deeply repulsive to them.
The psychological implications are profound. To crack open your own chest and find yourself completely hollow signifies a catastrophic loss of internal substance. We talked about the solar plexus being the center of gut feelings. To find that space empty is to realize you have no guts.
Literally and figuratively.
Yes.
Yes.
You have no intuition, no core identity, no life force.
It's like the ultimate imposter syndrome literalized as body horror. You crack yourself open to find the source of the problem, to fix the hardware bug, and you realize there's no hard drive in there at all.
That's a great analogy.
You're just an empty plastic casing. It is incredibly bleak.
Bleak is the perfect word. It represents a feeling that one's soul, or vital essence, has been entirely stripped away by the system. Or perhaps, and this is the terrifying thought the dream introduces, perhaps it was never there to begin with. The nightmare has transitioned from a fear of what others will do to the body to a horrifying revelation of what the self has already become. a hollow shell. It leaves the dreamer entirely defenseless against their own mind. They have exposed their deepest vulnerability only to find a void.
So you have a dreamer sitting in an operating room with a volleyball-sized hole in their chest, looking into an empty void. The psychological terror has peaked. A human mind can't sustain that level of acute terror indefinitely without waking up or snapping.
It really can't.
So how does the subconscious try to diffuse this absolute peak of panic? How does it resolve the tension? By injecting something completely laughably absurd.
Which is a classic defense mechanism of an overloaded brain.
After the self-mutilation, suddenly there is a rush of activity. A group of nurses and one doctor come hurrying into the room to help. And this doctor is famous Japanese actor Tori Matsuzaka.
It is such a jarring, bizarre tonal shift.
It really is. I burst out laughing when I read this in the source text. The text explicitly states he's an actor, but in the dream he was put in charge as my doctor.
And this sudden injection of pop culture absurdity is fascinating. Why Tori Matsuzaka? Why a celebrity?
Let me guess. Is it because the brain is overheating? Like earlier I made the bad metaphor about the parking ticket. But if we use a computer metaphor, is this like a RAM overload?
That is a much better metaphor, yes. Think of the brain's amygdala, the fear processor, as a computer's CPU. The dreamer has just confronted an unbearable trauma, their own physical and spiritual emptiness. The psychological weight, the emotional rendering of that empty void is too heavy for the brain to sustain. The CPU is overheating. It's at 99% usage.
So it force quits the application.
Exactly. When a computer processor overheats, it triggers a failsafe and force quits the heavy application, often throwing up a random low-energy screensaver to stabilize the system.
I love that.
The sleeping brain does the same thing. It desperately throws a lifeline. It conjures a recognized, comforting, visually familiar face, a celebrity crush, an actor, to act as a hero or a savior. The brain force quits the pure horror and throws up the mental screensaver of a celebrity cameo to try and regulate the dreamer's heart rate and emotional state.
Dreams rarely stick to one genre. Just as you think you're in a pure, unadulterated horror film, your brain throws in a cameo from a romantic comedy lead.
Right.
I've had that happen. You're running from a demon, and suddenly you're in a buddy cop movie with Paul Rudd. It's a roller coaster of cognitive dissonance.
But the crucial thing to notice here is that the relief doesn't last. The mental screensaver glitches. The dream refuses to let the dreamer entirely off the hook.
Right, because the underlying anxiety, the empty chest cavity, hasn't been resolved. Toei Matsuzaka is just a temporary patch over a literal gaping wound. So the dreamer, with this open chest, walks over to a bed on the right side of the room to lie down and prepare for whatever surgery this actor is going to perform to fix them. But as they look at the adjacent beds, the ones occupied by the elderly women we mentioned earlier, they realize something chilling. The women aren't just sleeping anymore, they are dead.
The proximity to death immediately shatters the comfort of the celebrity savior. The illusion of medical care is broken again. The brain reminds the dreamer. These beds aren't for healing. They are holding areas for corpses.
That's grim.
Very. The dead grandmothers serve as a grim, undeniable reminder of the dreamer's impending fate. If the bureaucracy killed them, it will kill the dreamer too.
And then the dream delivers one of its final, cruelest tricks. The dreamer goes to lie down on their designated bed, but as they sit down, they feel a large, human-like lump under the blanket.
Yeah.
They jump up in shock, instinctually apologizing, thinking they just sat on another patient. But when they pull back the blanket, it's not a person. It's a large plastic body pillow. The dead woman who had been in that bed had already been cleared away, and this plastic, human-shaped proxy was left in her place.
This detail is meticulously cruel. We talk about the uncanny valley in robotics and animation, the unsettling feeling when something looks almost human but isn't. The dream uses that exact psychological discomfort here.
Why a plastic pillow, though? Why not just an empty bed?
Because an empty bed is just empty. A plastic pillow shaped like a human reinforces the theme of artificiality and hollowness that was just introduced by the dreamer's own empty solar plexus.
I see.
It's the brain's rendering engine failing to generate human complexity, defaulting to a cheap plastic prop. But symbolically, it's devastating. A person dies, and they are immediately replaced by a plastic, lifeless object that only mimics human shape.
Wow.
It reinforces the idea that in this specific nightmare landscape, human life has zero inherent value. You're a hollow cavity, and when you die, you are replaced by a plastic pillow. It is the ultimate dehumanization.
It's just layer upon layer of psychological dismantling. The dreamer is empty inside, the surrounding people are dead, the replacements are plastic, and the only doctor is an actor playing a role. Nothing is real, and everything is terrifying. We are reaching the absolute climax of the dream. The system is failing.
And this is where the physical sensations of the dream begin to bridge the gap into the waking biological world.
In the final moments of the dream, actor Tori Matsuzaka is signing a piece of paper, officially taking charge of the surgery. And the surrounding nurses, the traitors, are finally showing pity, murmuring things like, "This is impossible," and "poor thing."
Too little, too late.
Exactly, it's too late. The dreamer notes that their consciousness begins to fade, specifically stating it feels like it's escaping from the top of their head.
The feeling of consciousness fading, specifically from the crown of the head, is a highly documented sensation in dream analysis. It's often reported in sleep paralysis episodes and near-death nightmares.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the vestibular system in the inner ear and the spatial mapping centers of the brain simulating the sensation of the mind trying to physically detach from the failing body. It's the sensation of the soul leaving the vessel.
And the physical mechanics of this failing vessel are terrifyingly specific. The dreamer desperately tries to breathe, they inhale air through their mouth, but because they have cut a volleyball-sized hole in their own solar plexus, the air they inhale doesn't stay in their lungs.
It escapes.
It just escapes directly out of the gaping hole in their chest. They are actively breathing, but they are suffocating.
The visual is harrowing. The text describes the cut flaps of skin around the wound blowing inward with the escaping air.
Unable to speak, paralyzed by the dream mechanics, the dreamer desperately tries to convey to the doctor and the nurses, "Hurry, my consciousness is flying away." And just as they reach the absolute precipice, just as they are about to entirely lose consciousness from the immense pain and the sheer biological terror of suffocation, they snap awake.
The body intervenes.
The dream ends. Physical eyes open.
The suffocation acts as the ultimate ejection seat. When the brain simulates asphyxiation so vividly, it triggers a cascade of physical responses. The chemoreceptors in the brain detect what they think is a spike in carbon dioxide, which triggers a massive adrenaline dump into the bloodstream.
Forcing you awake.
Exactly, forcing the dreamer to violently wake up to secure an actual physical airway.
Okay. So the dreamer wakes up in a cold sweat, gasping for air. They've survived the gymnasium, the betrayal, the empty cavity, the dead women, the plastic pillows, and the suffocating chest wound. It is an incredibly intense, exhausting narrative.
It really is.
But as we teased at the very beginning of the deep dive, the source text doesn't end there. We transition right now to the final critical paragraph of the author's account, and this is the moment everything we just talked about clicks into place.
This is the revelation that elevates the text from a simple account of a bad dream to a profound argumentative psychological document.
In the final lines of the text, the dreamer makes an admission to the reader. They state that right before falling asleep that night, in the actual waking world, they had prayed a very specific prayer. They thought, "I want to sleep forever. Let me do that, God, please."
I want to sleep forever.
And the dreamer writes, "I wonder if that gave this dream its meaning."
The answer, from a psychological and dream analysis standpoint, is a resounding, undeniable yes. It gave the dream its entire meaning. We have to tie this entire journey together using this waking fact. The dreamer, in the real world, actively wished for an endless sleep.
Which is essentially a desire to give up, to escape the waking world. Maybe it was a casual, exhausted thought after a grueling week, or maybe it was a deeper, more profound death wish born of severe emotional exhaustion. But the brain heard it.
Exactly. The subconscious mind heard the conscious mind ask for oblivion. And the nightmare we just analyzed is the deeper mind's brutal, visceral, argumentative response to that wish.
Argumentative.
Yes. There is a concept in evolutionary psychology called threat simulation theory, proposed by Antti Ravanso. The theory posits that the biological function of dreaming is to simulate threatening events so the brain can practice threat perception and avoidance.
Like a flight simulator for survival.
Precisely. But here, the threat isn't a tiger or a falling rock. The threat is the dreamer's own conscious thought. The conscious mind said, "I want to sleep forever." And the subconscious, acting as the survival simulator, takes that phrase and strips it of any romantic, peaceful, or poetic connotation.
Paints it literally.
It says, "You want to sleep forever. Let me show you what sleeping forever actually looks like in biological reality."
Oh my God. The suffocation mechanic suddenly makes perfect, horrifying sense.
Oh.
By breathing in but having the air escape through the chest, The dream is showing the total futility of the physical body trying to live when the mind has asked to die.
Yes.
The nightmare isn't just torturing the dreamer for the sake of a scare, it's an evolutionary survival mechanism.
Yes. The subconscious constructs a scenario that illustrates the terrifying, undignified reality of what sleeping forever entails. It shows the dreamer the reality of emptiness, the hollow body cavity with no guts, no life. It shows them helplessness, the forced hospitalization, the loss of voice, the physical paralysis.
It's unmasking death.
Completely. It shows them the proximity to death, the dead elderly women, the plastic pillow replacing humanity. It argues that death isn't a peaceful escape. It is a cold, bureaucratic hollowing out.
It makes the prospect of sleeping forever so deeply horrific, so painful, and so full of indignity that the dreamer is forced to fight back. The subconscious pushes the dreamer to the absolute brink of simulated suffocation so that they are desperate to wake up and fight for air. The dream is essentially screaming at the conscious mind, "You do not want to sleep forever. You want to breathe."
Some powerful, combative counterargument formulated in the theater of the mind. The conscious mind wanted to surrender, and the subconscious mind deployed a psychological thriller to remind the dreamer of their innate biological will to survive.
It's brilliant.
The horror of the dream is directly proportional to the danger of the pre-sleep thought. The brain used every tool at its disposal, rhamatonia, the vagus nerve, the amygdala, to violently reject the conscious mind's death wish.
That is just, it's a phenomenal way to look at how our brains protect us from ourselves. It really reframes the whole concept of a nightmare. Which brings us to the end of our deep dive today.
It's been quite a ride.
Let's recap this incredible journey. We started with the deceptive, mundane comfort of a gymnasium hospital, lured into a false sense of security by a familiar face, and the hippocampal replay of a toenail injury. We witnessed the stealthy violation of bodily autonomy, the sudden cold betrayal of trusted caregivers, and the claustrophobic, biologically driven terror of losing one's voice in a room full of indifferent traitors.
We moved through the grotesque climax of self-mutilation, exploring the gut-brain axis, the discovery of the hollow, empty void within the solar plexus, and the jarring, absurd RAM overload arrival of a celebrity savior who could do nothing to stop the overwhelming tide of death and artificial plastic proxies.
Culminating in that profound realization, the entire nightmare was a direct, life-saving dialogue. It was the brain fighting back against the dreamer's own pre-sleep desire to give up.
And that is the ultimate takeaway of this analysis. It emphasizes the profound psychological utility of nightmares. They aren't just random firings of a sleeping brain. As we've seen in this text, they can be highly structured, metaphorical, neurobiological arguments.
Yeah.
Their debates our deeper survival-driven minds have with our conscious waking thoughts. They force us to confront what it truly means to lose our agency, our guts, or our life. In many ways, nightmares are the mind's most aggressive, uncompromising form of self-care.
The mind's most aggressive form of self-care. I love that phrasing. We started this deep dive talking about the murky waters of the subconscious, about how the human mind doesn't work like a clean, simple X-ray machine, but maybe it does in its own weird way. Maybe a nightmare is the diagnostic scan of an emotional fracture, and the terrifying imagery is just the brain's way of putting a cast on it, forcing it to set, forcing you to wake up and take another breath.
It's a visceral, evolutionary, necessary shock to the system.
So I want to leave you, our listener, with a lingering question to ponder as you go about the rest of your day. We've seen how brilliantly and brutally a mind can construct a defense mechanism against a dark waking thought. If our nightmares are sometimes our subconscious mind's way of fighting back, well, what is your brain trying to protect you from the next time you wake up in a cold sweat? What argument is it trying to win against you? Until next time, sleep well and pay very close attention to what you ask for just before you close your eyes.